Welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. Got to get through all of this stuff before I get done with today, because I'm just going to get, the news is just going to outpace everything I'm doing. And I'm not trying to do stuff that is actually topical, that is specific to the news, but there's some things I really want to get expressed before the next phase of our American adventure, whether it be dissolution, revolution, civil war, or empire, because we're on path for empire, which is kind of a weird and crazy thing for history buffs. It's not about Trump. I've been accused of defending Trump, apologizing for Trump, being like justifying Trump, mostly by Mr. P on Plus Bora, quite a lot over the last few months, and none of that's true. There's a part where it has to look that way, because you can't have a conversation that isn't Donald Trump. So if you consume corporate media, and Mr. P absolutely consumes corporate media, whether it's The Atlantic, Huffington Post, CNN, Wall Street Journal. You know, Wall Street Journal and New York Times are not non-corporate media. They are absolutely corporate media. I mean, 90% of the media is owned by 10 corporate entities when you trace all of the stuff. That's a lot of concentration of information flow, and New York Times is part of that. Washington Post is part of that. And, you know, they've made use of the activist journalism for their own gain, you know, but they've also made use of the Trump effect for their own gain, profit. And we're at a point where you can't have an article about any topic that doesn't mention Trump. So anytime you talk about something like business taxes, it has to be about Trump. Now, there's the fellow traveler thing in the media, where it's Trump and the Republicans and the right-wingers and the Nazis and the racists. They're all lumped together, but it's all following this Trump thing. You know, there's a video, 9 minutes of Trump disavowing racism, white supremacy, Nazis, 38 times in a couple of years, and it's a 9-minute video. It's just this montage. And if you show it to someone like Mr. P, they'll literally deny it exists, okay? They will literally, like, deny the existence of what's going on, because it's not enough. Or, well, why won't he do it every time someone asks? Because you'll never stop asking. Like, there's plenty going on here, you know. Why can't I control what you say and when you say it? Sure, whatever, dude. But despite the fact that the news, the media, the corporate media, has been using Trump as a backstop, as a backdrop, as an attention focus for every single thing for years and years and years, most of what I talk about, most of what I'm debating, has nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with things like taxes. What are taxes? What is economics? What is an equity position? You know, how much is actually being paid in taxes, and why do you think you need more? You know, I argue with someone who literally thinks that 90% of government money is wasted, and that if you just got rid of all of the infrastructure that surrounds welfare and benefits and entitlements and just gave people UBI, you could give everyone a couple $1,000s a month and have no government involvement, just taxes. Same person who says that we need more taxes because we just can't do it. We can't provide enough services. Like, well, more taxes doesn't mean more services. More taxes means more bureaucracy. There's a lack of relationship here, you know. But it doesn't matter, because it's all Trump's fault. Trump. So if I start talking about taxes, it's Trump. When I talk about foreign policy, if I talk about a Middle East peace deal, then the brain breaks, because there can be nothing positive about Trump. Okay? I got him to admit that Trump did a couple positive things. He said by accident. a couple weeks ago. But most of what I talk about shouldn't have anything to do with Trump. If I talk about peace in the Middle East, if I talk about, hey, you've got a couple countries that are willing to acknowledge that Israel has a right to exist, you could snowball this. If I talk about China taking over and colonizing Africa, Trump. I'm like, why? Why is Trump important on whether or not China is killing people in Nigeria? Why? And then the main thing, like the really big elephant in the room, is multinational corporate globalist oligarchy. I have no, it almost doesn't make sense when you put all the words together, but really it's what we're dealing with, okay? Very rich people, very powerful people. They're not always the same, but they're often pretty close, who run most of the power centers and money centers of the world. Also own all of your media and are feeding you all of your allowable information. You can say, oh, Facebook's immune to it because Lizard Man Zuckerberg isn't part of the old families. And I'm like, no, he's right there, okay? If you go to one of the dinners, you go to one of the dinner meetings, they socialize together, okay? You go to a, let's say, meditation retreat, okay? Or a dinner with spiritual leaders. And you'll have 5 or 6 guys who are pretty big in the actual spiritual meditation scene. They've got their enlightenment, and enlightenment could be narrow or broad. I've been with some of these people, and I've had my experiences. But then you pull some of these Silicon Valley guys in, and I'm using the enlightenment scene because it's one I'm very familiar with, and they're right there. The influence, everything. They're not independent outsiders. They're part of it. Okay, when Lizard Man gets that much money, he's part of the scene. Okay, he's not going out and having a hot dog at Wiener Schnitzel and talking to the 45-year-old Filipino lady behind the counter who came here when she was 20 when she married a sailor, and that's not who he's hanging out with. He's hanging out with the people who run the world, and he's part of that. Okay, I mean, yeah. There's people like Trump who don't follow in that. They're the new money, the outsiders, the anti-establishment. But is there anyone in social media who qualifies as one of the outsiders? It's not Enlightenment, dude. It's not Lizard Man. There isn't one, okay? They're all part of it, okay? They go right into it. They're not maintaining independence, okay? So your media is just it owned and operated, affiliated, controlled by the oligarchs. And it isn't like some sort of conspiracy. There's always rich people who control things, okay? There's always going to be rich and powerful people. And it's not just about money. This is one of the things the left really does to fuck with your head, is say it's all about money. If you look at a powerful family, dynastic powerful family in any time throughout recorded history, you'll have one of them deals with the business, one of them deals with politics, one of them deals with the church, if there's a church power, or whatever religious. One of them deals with the military, if the military is a political power center. They have this thing they do, right? And then they have their little breeding programs, like Yale. Yale is a university. It's part of an American breeding project. It's not explicitly stated as such, but face it, that's what Yale and Harvard and all the Ivy League universities do. They're places where you go and you meet and you do that. And you end up if you end up marrying outside of the circle, things go a little weird. Like your son might become one of the Johnson and Johnson family sons, who's, his mother wasn't born rich. He got these weird ideas in his head when he was growing up, and now he's a little bit rebellious. Stuff like that happens, right? So you got a breeding program. This complex, this rich and powerful, they're controlling your media. They are telling you things. They're blaming everything on Trump. I don't care if you like Trump. I don't care if you don't like Trump. What I care about is my information, my censorship, my freedom, my liberty. There are always rich and powerful, and they have two modes of operation. One is against you, and one is for you. Okay? In Rome, there used to be a kind of a competition among the rich and powerful to build better things. Bigger stadiums, better baths, better parks, okay? And this wasn't something where they get taxed and to provide a living wage for whatever group that you care about this week, right? And don't tell me it's not this week, because the Hispanics in Florida definitely figured out you didn't care about them anymore. Some of the election results are hilarious. But, sorry, I should have said Latinos, not Hispanics. But the competition was to provide civil infrastructure, civic benefit, okay? It may be infrastructure, it may be a library, it may just be, funding a university. There's all sorts of ways this can come about. But it's not this positive aspect of what the rich and powerful were doing during the Roman Empire, which I'm using as an example because we have really good records on how this worked, was not controlling, okay? Bill Gates. Man, I hate to use Bill Gates. Oh! Bill Gates doesn't want to provide you with a free vaccine. Bill Gates wants to provide you with a mandatory vaccine. This is the difference, okay? If Publius Clinton provides you with a bathhouse, there's strings and control attached. Absolutely. And that's the difference. That's the problem. We always have rich and powerful. The thing is that you need to celebrate the rich and the powerful doing the things that they should do, instead of demonizing them for being rich and powerful. And that's kind of a side topic. It's a whole entire, I can do a lecture series on this. There's all the civilizations and all the history. But what I'm really getting at here is that none of this has been about Trump. Trump is a useful demon. Okay, he's like a figurehead. He's the dude with the goat hooves and the horns and a pentacle that you can use to scare all the little children. Just that most of the little children are grown-ups. Pretty snowflakes, man. But he's not the issue. He's not the issue that I ever want to talk about. If I want to talk about foreign policy, I want to talk about foreign policy, like actual threats to American sovereignty. All of a sudden, people who used to be pro-union now hate the idea of American unions because Trump didn't want a free trade deal, which is not free trade. It's advantage trade. There's no such thing as a free trade agreement. And the intent is always for one party to gain an advantage. Foreign policy, corporate taxes. The tax thing became such a stupid... if you took the names off and you looked at the economic proposals and models, if you could just take a look at it, there's so much more sense in it than anyone's willing to admit, just because they hate the demon. It's a very religious thing. It's very, very religious. It's fanatical. So I've been talking about the media, the corporate control of your information, the robbing and raping of the internet. The internet was supposed to, and this is Mr. P. He and I have been around the internet for a while, okay? Back in the 90s, we had the promise of information, freedom of information, freedom to produce information, this massive ability to take all of the information of all of humanity and put it together and discover new things and make it great. Not Twitter, not Facebook, not corporate media control of what you are allowed to know or believe. And they do it through basic stupid psychology. They have provided you, Mr. P, with a demon. And the demon's all that matters. The freedom of the internet, the promise of the new age of information, it's all gone, man. Samizdat. Always remember samizdat. There is a dark web, and there's a reason for it. Stay sideways, and, resist the media once in a while. Remember that who owns it is those very large multinational corporate interests that don't have your interests at heart.